Hey guys, so we're going to start a series of really tiny mini lectures and some assignments that you'll do at home, and then you'll bring to class and we'll talk together and we'll work together on those, and then you'll have an assignment to actually submit. So we're going to start with the first two mini lectures, so to speak. This should just be a review for the majority of you. So the first two pieces that we're going to work with, elements that we're going to work with, are diction and syntax. Obviously, since those are all about words and sentences, those naturally go together. So the first thing that we're going to just remind ourselves about is diction. Diction is the choice of words that any, writer uses. So the choices that they make obviously are important to them and have a direct impact on not only the story itself and telling that story, but setting the stage for the tone, which obviously leads to meaning and all those sorts of things. Again, we'll talk about more of those later, but just focusing on diction. Diction is ultimately important. And to quote a couple things from a wonderful educator named Nancy Dean, Nancy says, if you're reading a story or reading anything and you don't understand the words and so you just skip them, it's essentially like listening to a symphony with headphones or earplugs in so that you can't hear what is being played. Every word is important and you need to pay attention to it because of what function every word and those choices play. And so not only do you need to hear the words, you also need to feel the words. All the words have different connotations and feelings, and they create some sort of a reaction, so to speak, in you or in the reader. And so when you're a serious student of literature, like you are, then you need to understand not only what the words say, but how they make you feel. And I'm sure that you can definitely understand that. The words that a quality writer uses must be very exact, and that's what obviously well-published, especially the works that we study in AP, those people are masters. So their choice of words, their diction, is exacting, and thus we need to understand why those choices were made. High-quality writers don't use words from my forbidden word list like pretty, nice, good, because they're not exact, they don't tell you anything, and they certainly don't create any kind of a picture in your mind. So again, to quote Nancy Dean, to a writer, someone who's really trying to help you create a vision, an image, a feeling, then a coat isn't torn, it's tattered. The United States Army doesn't want revenge, it thirsts for revenge. A door doesn't shut, it thuds. It gives you a sound, a feeling, something much more powerful that sets that stage and creates the tone. Again, we'll talk about that. So the diction also depends on what the topic is, what the purpose of that piece is, what the occasion of it is, all sorts of things. So the diction helps you to understand much more about the complexity and the sophistication of that writing, of that piece. All right. Obviously, there are some pieces that use specialized diction. If you're talking about computers and technology, then you're going to have a more jargon-filled piece. But since we're talking about literature, the jargon may be relevant to what's happening or to the protagonist in some other way. So make sure that if there is some kind of a specialized vocabulary, that you understand that. Make sure that you also understand what the purpose of the piece is. We all know those three: to entertain, to persuade, or to inform. Right, but there's much more to it than that, especially at your level. It's much more deep than that. So think about what that purpose is, and again, this is going to lead to tone. What is that author saying about whatever his or her purpose is via theme, I would assume. So think about what the overall goal is by the writer at the end of the piece, and so how does the diction lend itself to understanding that? Remember that occasion is important. Is this a really formal piece? Is it a very informal piece? Does it depend, on the era in which it was written? Because obviously things that were written longer ago, for instance in the 1800s, those are going to be much more formal and more, I said formal, I guess we'll just leave it at that, formal pieces than maybe something that's casually written today. However, that doesn't mean that things that are written today that are more casual aren't important, so don't put the import on that particular piece. You do have to understand connotations and denotations of words. So if you don't understand, like you can look a word up in a thesaurus or in a dictionary, but it doesn't really give you a feel. So if you don't know a word, if you're really unfamiliar with it, and you can't get a feel via the context clues, what the connotation of the word may be, ask. Find out what the connotation of a word is if you really don't understand it. The diction is what makes a masterful writing often. It also is something that's fresh and new. You know, sometimes the themes have been written over and over and over, but what makes something new and interesting is its diction. That's what makes it more powerful. So we're going to stop there with diction, and my next small podcast will be on syntax.